Okay, I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but I can't just not say anything. And I do think that I'm kind of in the middle. I do, I said that I don't think that I remember getting asked by two men that I know, um, my husband and his friend, like if I would trade places and I would be a man. And, I would definitely try, give it a shot. But like, I ultimately, despite, having to have my period every month and, the things that go with that. And, obviously I do believe that there is a patriarchy and, women also, being less physically strong. Like there's a reason women are scared of men. And some of that is, physicality, obviously, but also because we have lived in a system that has let men get away with abusing women for decades. And obviously it's gotten better, but like a couple of months ago, there was an 18-year-old now man who had put girls in the hospital, to like two girls in the hospital, and because he was sexually abusing them. And well, at least one girl was in the hospital. I don't know if both of them were in the hospital. Either way, he had like sexually abused them, and he just got like probation or something. And I'm just like, he ruined these girls' lives, and that he gets a fucking slap on the wrist. Like, oh, boys will be boys. What's damn it, what's his name? The Stanford swimmer guy. I definitely feel like I should have known this. Anyway, I haven't read her book, but Chanel. My Name is Chanel. She, has written a book about her experience being just kind of thrown away like trash, and he gets a slap on the wrist. We can't ruin his future. Her future, it's like, you didn't give a shit about the fact that she was abused by him. And so like, it's like, yeah, this is why women choose the bear. Because like over and over, it's been, men have abused women and the system doesn't care. And so like trying to act like there's not patriarchy is dismissive of what women have gone through. So that's point one. So, but despite that, I feel like there's something really beautiful about femalehood, about, being allowed to be in touch with our emotions, femininity and, things like that. And so like, we have a system that has been set up to, prop up men and that their needs are important. But at the same time, I still choose to be a woman. But I think that's also because of like, we've had a system, not a system, but like a culture that's like, man up and stuff down your feelings for men, and like, don't be a pussy, right? And to say like there's not toxic masculinity when you have men who have treated their sons like that, yes, there is toxic masculinity. And I just like the way that Jack kind of was very dismissive about like, oh, patriarchy, toxic masculinity. And I'm like, these things are true. We have example after example of this. And obviously that doesn't mean that this is all of men, and that, there aren't beautiful, positive traits about men. And that's, what I think that we 100% agree on, Jack and I, because, he's talking about like men in, the heart space. And when I see men with their children, being good fathers and, being nurturing and, taking up, domestic chores. Like some fathers are like the cook because they're a good cook, it's like, I'm like, this is great. I love seeing this kind of balance that people, have in their homes. And I want that, I talk about, positive, like I'm really pro, like we can talk about more about positive male attributes, empathy, respect. I am definitely someone who's like, if like seeing a man cry, I think, is beautiful. I remember seeing like, you see a guy like that lost, I remember this video, this man, he had lost his dog. He loved his dog so much. And they gifted him a puppy and he starts crying. And it's just like, this is like so beautiful because it's just like this, he's expressing love, I want men to be able to express themselves, it like fully and not, I think like we see a lot of men just go right towards anger because, they've been told not to show other emotions a lot of times. And that, that's sad. Like, I think we need to encourage and support, men being able to show all of their emotions. So, yeah, I know Jack is not on social media, but, men not being in the heart space, in the home, rearing children, they've contributed to their own PR partly, not just because, these TV shows that I talked about, like I hating the stereotype of the incompetent father, were the showrunners were men, but also like you have this whole, thing online of like, the weaponized incompetence of, men taking on domestic labor, on social media. And it's like, that's intentional, and yeah, women, and like, let me just like say this, women don't want to be the nag. Women don't want to feel like they have to mother you. And, if men really were trying to take on more of the domestic labor, they would just they would learn to just see what needs to be done and not have to have their wife be like, hey, can you do this thing? Because her having to say this, one, puts her in the position of like feeling like she has to mother her husband. And then two, he then feels like she's nagging him. But also, sorry, my two was actually supposed to be that it's putting the like emotional and mental load. It's putting the mental load on the woman to constantly be seeing what needs to be happening in the household. So for us to have, for men to really take up the heart space, they need to take on some of the mental load of what needs to happen in a household so that women aren't constantly like doing all the scheduling, you know, juggling like all the like what the chores need to happen and then what's the I was going to say dictating, but that's not quite the word I was looking for. Delegating the tasks. And then, yeah, for men to truly not take over, but like have 50-50, they need to step up. And it's not like no men are. That's not the case at all. Like I see very active men in the household. But we're seeing a lot of men just being like, I don't want the responsibility. And so, yeah, okay. So you're then, men are then not, feeling like they're not needed in, this way or that, in to be the breadwinner, but they're not picking up the slack in the other way. It's not women keeping them out of the home, you know. Oh, also a woman doesn't want to have to micromanage the, the man. And, if he was not taught to do chores because of the way that his home was structured, where his mother did everything and didn't teach him how to do laundry and things like that, then have a little humility and say, I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? And then, pay attention and then at least attempt to do it right. And if you don't get it right the first time, the woman has to have a little empathy and, be like, okay, try this instead, do this instead of this. But eventually, if a man keeps on just not figuring out how to do it right, then you have to kind of be like, are you sabotaging this? If a woman goes through this whole thing of putting pictures on a shopping list, saying what aisle is in, and all of this other stuff, and then you're still calling her and being like, I don't know where this is, then you're purposely sabotaging it so that you don't have to do that chore because you don't feel like doing it. So that's not the women keeping men out of the heart space. All right. I'm going to move on from that. He talks about the male brand being tainted. And, right at the beginning, I'm saying like, well, there's partly a reason. And it's partly like because so many men were let to get away with how they treat women. And then would do it over and over and over. If we were harsher on pedophiles and things like that right from the beginning, and they didn't keep abusing and abusing and abusing, then, maybe we would trust men more. And obviously it's not just pedophiles, it's other things too. Domestic abusers, things like that. So that's a systemic problem. And men have been a big part of building that system. So, once again, I'm going to say patriarchy. Anyway, he also talked about, the Equal Rights Amendment and Phyllis Schlafly. Just because you have one woman and being very vocal and then kind of, being like, oh, here's the other traditional women. So like they're, trad wives have always existed. People that are all about traditional family values, but a lot of them are leading traditional family value roles. Not everyone, not to say like there's a lot of women who are like, oh yeah, it's, all the benefits of being a woman. Sometimes in a heterosexual relationship, women take up so much more of the load. And I would say probably are not feeling like women have so many rights. Like Phyllis is saying that she would have to give up rights. And I'm like, to make things equal. I'm not 100% buying it, Um, yeah. I'm not buying, not that she feels this way, maybe, but that there were so many women that felt this way. We were still in a time when a single woman could be denied credit, a credit card, where if a woman got pregnant, she could be fired. Like we still had very big systemic problems. And like, that's what this equal rights amendment was supposed to fix, so that women weren't being, discriminated against because they were a woman. Obviously now we're in a time where, I mean, it's interesting because undoing the college admissions where they're trying to get like kind of more equal demographics, they're saying it's actually going to be hurting white men getting into college more, because they're just not performing at the same level. They're not pushing to like achieve. And I can't help but think like that maybe is a societal thing of like white men feeling like things will just be handed to them. And other groups, either being a minority or being a woman, they feel like they have to perform more in order to get their piece of the pie. So anyway, I guess I'm just saying, like, in some ways we already had like some of these equal rights things. And it's funny because they were benefit like this thing in this one in particular that was rolled back, under the Trump administration and stuff like that. Actually is hurting the demographic that you wouldn't think it would have been hurting. Yeah. I think that there were plenty of women in the 1970s that probably didn't think like Phyllis, that women would have to give up some of their power, their rights, their power, if this law passed, kind of thing. Anyway, I think I've said a lot, and I don't know if there's parts that I was gonna address that I forgot to address. Jack and I agree that we both want men in the home. We just don't necessarily agree on why men don't have half of the heart space. You know, obviously there are going to be women that are like, I like feeling needed. I like domestic chores. I like rearing my children and like, wanting a traditional life and having the privilege to be able to stay home with their children. I mean, that's the thing. If you have the money to have the privilege for one of the partners to stay home, God, you're lucky. But most families have two working parents. And I don't think that most of those working mothers are trying to keep their husbands from taking on half of the labor. But a lot of them also have gotten exhausted with having to say, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? Da, da, da. And treating them like they're one of their children. So, if men really want half of the heart space, they can just do things. They can just take responsibility. Yeah. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say. So we also have these roles, job roles, that mostly have been done by women that are caregiving kind of jobs. Teaching, obviously. Now the Trump administration, taking effect in July 2026, has reclassified these roles. Education, nursing, social work. They are being, changed from professional to graduate degree for federal student loan purposes, making it so there's financial barriers and capping the loans, because basically these female-dominated fields, they feel like these people don't deserve to be supported to go into these fields. Yeah, it's just, do you think it's a coincidence that these are female-dominated roles, professions, and they're caregiving professions that are then being like, we're going to make it harder for you to be funded, harder for you to be able to get these jobs because you can't get the education that you need. I don't think that is a coincidence. And we can't pretend that women have made this choice so once again, patriarchy. It exists. Anyway, it's going to make it even less men wanting to get into professional heart space roles. Yeah, I'm going to say professional in this case, because a teacher, a social worker, and a nurse are professionals. And they're very needed. Yeah. Let's just shoot ourselves in the foot. I love this fucking country. Anyway, I'm just going to leave this on a bitter note. I appreciate Jack's work. I think we need people like Jack doing work for men and boys. I don't want this to feel like I'm attacking him. I mean, I kept talking to him for like an hour and a half. Like, it's not like I'm like, this is a terrible human being. He's a bad man or something like that, you know? And I agree with him on a lot of things. I agree with what he is wanting. I just don't agree with why he thinks that it doesn't exist. And I just felt like I had to say something. Oh, just though, I do, like, just so you know, there are nasty feminists. I do agree. I wouldn't have gone and said they're the nasties. But there are women that hate men, just like there's men that hate women. I don't want to be any part of that. I don't hate men. I have a lot of men that I absolutely adore. I don't think men are all bad. I don't think all women are good. There's terrible people, all genders, all races, all sexual orientations. Let's not, you know, put anyone on a pedestal and then dig a hole for some other people, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, women are angels. But obviously, women should feel safe in the world that they coexist in. And I think that's where a lot of the gender wars come from a system that has let men abuse women again and again. And obviously, I'm not saying this is not all men, 100%. I love seeing the men that are like speaking up about, you know, when these men, these, you know, uh, red pill kind of men, you know, are spouting things and they're like, hey, this is you just being insecure and you being a dick, you know. I appreciate men calling out other men. But I also think that women should maybe call out other women that are just kind of being mean, you know? So, yeah. Okay. It's been 30 minutes. I need to go. I hope I expressed myself well, and I hope that I come across as being trying to attack Jack. Um, I don't. He's not a bad man. I think that his heart is in the right place, and I appreciate him wanting to do the work that he's doing, because I do think that men are struggling, men and boys are struggling. Some of it is self-inflicted, and some of it is, we just need to change our society. There's just like a lot of meanness, So, yeah. Okay. I hope this is okay. All right. Well, thanks for listening if you did to my half-hour rant. I love you and I'll see you again soon. Bye.